Hello, I'm Esther Gidhui. It's Tuesday, March 1st. This is Africa 54.
Ukraine's second-largest city faced increased shelling on the 6th day of Russia's invasion. Which themes will dominate President Joe Biden's first State of the Union address? We'll have a preview. And Botswana is on the path to eliminate mother-to-child transmission of HIV. We'll explain what made the upcoming milestone a reality.
Russia's bombardment of Ukraine appears to be ramping up. Ukraine's largest second city faced increased Russian shelling Tuesday, while a column of Russian forces stretched out along a road north of the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, on the 6th day of Russia's invasion of the Eastern European nation. The Ukrainian Foreign Ministry shared a video of one strike at the Kharkiv Regional State Administration building in the center of the city that left a huge ball of fire and smoke of several cars were passing through. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said in a video statement, quote, "The strike against Kharkiv is a war crime. This is a state terrorism on the part of Russia." The strike killed at least 6 people and injured 20 others, according to Ukrainian emergency services officials. European Union Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell says that Russian shelling of civilian infrastructure that took place Monday in Kharkiv violates the laws of war. But Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov dismissed allegations of war crimes and told reporters that Russian troops don't conduct any strikes against civilian infrastructure and residential areas. The war in Ukraine is causing refugees to flee to neighboring countries. Volunteers handed out food Tuesday to refugees at a makeshift camp in Przemysl, Poland. Poland has a Ukrainian community of nearly 1 million people, the region's largest, and it is welcoming a large portion of the refugees. Across Central Europe, authorities are setting up reception centers in tents where people can get medical aid and process asylum papers. Thousands of volunteers are driving to the borders with donations of food, blankets and clothes. Most of the refugees escaping the war are crossing into the European Union from borders in eastern Poland, Slovakia, Hungary and northern and northeastern Romania. Ukrainian officials announced Tuesday that troops from Russian ally Belarus had entered Ukraine's Chernihiv region. Meanwhile, in Poland, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg says NATO will hold both Russia and Belarus accountable for what is happening in Ukraine. For more on the update of this war, here's VOA's Heather Murdock.
Right now we are driving from the Ukrainian capital Kyiv to the western city of Lviv. We've been on the road for a couple of hours now, and we have seen many checkpoints, often manned by civilian armed groups that are assisting the army right now of Ukraine. We understand that there is a corridor of Russian troops north of the capital Kyiv, some say as long as 50 kilometers, and we have been told that today might be the last day for the near future that people can travel safely out of Kyiv to other cities. Yesterday there was a crunch of people leaving the capital, and we understand in the past week more than 500,000 people have left Ukraine for the border countries. The Ukrainian capital is now experiencing shortages of fuel for cars. Cash machines are either empty or closed. We're not sure which. Most businesses are closed, few groceries are open, and those that are closed during the curfews. Over the weekend, we had a curfew from Saturday afternoon till Monday morning, and last night there was a curfew from 8 p.m. until this morning. Peace talks are continuing between Russian and Ukrainian officials, but many people here fear that this is just a respite before the violence begins again. Heather Murdock, VOA News, on the road from Kyiv to Lviv in Ukraine.
The escalating conflict in Ukraine, the grinding pandemic, and as always, the economy are likely to dominate President Joe Biden's first State of the Union speech on Tuesday. Analysts say this customary presidential address comes at an unusual time in history. VOA's Anita Powell reports from Washington.
There's not a single thing.
The constitutionally mandated address is the rhetorical highlight of the year for a U.S. president. Joe Biden is no exception. But this year's State of the Union, his first, although he has previously addressed a joint session of Congress, comes at an especially fraught time. The White House says that during the Tuesday night speech, Biden is likely to discuss Russia's invasion of Ukraine and provide his wider view of the world.
We are in the middle of an active invasion, so I just can't give you a preview of what that will look like in the State of the Union. As it relates to how the president views his approach to foreign policy, the president has ran for president wanting to return America's seat at the world, wanting to return to a time where other leaders around the world could trust the word and the commitments of the United States. And what you have seen over the last few months is the president deliver on exactly that.
In the past week, Biden has delivered and delivered and delivered several speeches on the escalating crisis in Ukraine. Among Americans, Biden should expect a partisan split in the reaction he gets when discussing what he sees as the greatest threat to global security since World War II.
The country generally rallies behind a president when we face an international crisis. If you watch Tucker Carlson or listen to Donald Trump, or know what many Republicans in Congress have been saying, we're not going to get that rallying around the president by a significant share of the population. The tribal divisions are there now for even things that affect American national security.
Presidents also used his speech to sell Congress on their domestic agenda and bills they want to pass. And there is one topic every president is expected to cover in the State of the Union address, says Jeremy Suri, a historian at the University of Texas at Austin.
Every president comments on the economy because they all want to say the state of the economy is such that we are getting richer, we are doing better than ever before. The only exceptions when presidents don't talk about the economy are when we are at war ourselves.
One thing that is certain, America and much of the world will be listening to what he has to say. The address begins at 9 p.m. in Washington on Tuesday. Anita Powell, VOA News, Washington.
Now to a VOA exclusive interview. VOA's Peter Clotty sat down with Ugandan President Museveni to discuss a wide range of issues, including democracy, human rights and governance. The opposition and human rights activists accuse Museveni, who has been in power for 35 years, of repressing and torturing his opponents. Here is their conversation held at the State House in Entebbe.
Let's begin, Mr. President, with regional peace and stability as well as continental peace. What role is Uganda playing and is committed to playing to ensuring peace and stability, particularly in the East African corridor?
Our role in Africa, it can only be two elements. Element number one, to tell the Africans the medicine we used. Because there is this medicine which seems to have helped us. So when I meet, wherever I meet, I say, please, the antibiotic I used. And the antibiotic has 4 elements: patriotism, Pan-Africanism, socio-economic transformation, and democracy. And secondly, where our help is required, we help. And we're able to help. Okay. Our soldiers will go anywhere, and they will not say, why are you taking me to Somalia? Because he knows. He knows that for the future of Africa, Somalia needs Uganda, and Uganda needs Somalia.
Let's talk about democracy and the rule of law in Uganda. Recently, you talked about elections that were held during the pandemic and all. I understand you called on some opposition leaders to meet and all that. My question is President Yoweri Museveni willing to meet your critics and opponents to hash out, because as you said, it's patriotism and building the country together, to talk?
We are meeting, we have a group called IPOD, Interparty
Advisory Committee?
Yes.
Something like that, okay.
We have some of those, a few who don't come, who don't want to come, that don't attend. Otherwise, we have been having this for the last, actually, almost 10 years now. We discuss everything, party funding. We said the government must fund them following a certain formula according to the numerical strength of the parties in parliament.
Some of these minor parties, as you call them, are saying that the political space appears to be narrowed, and that when they go about meeting their constituents or meeting their supporters, security agencies, including police, are used to stop them. Sometimes they are beaten, sometimes they are dispersed. How do you respond to such criticism, Mr. President?
The friction was over the corona time. Actually, they are the ones who caused the second wave. So second wave of corona should be opposition wave. That's how we get into some friction. Otherwise, there's no, the radios. Uganda has got one of the freest media in the world. Check how many radio stations are there. They say whatever they want to say. If they break the law, they are accused in court and they fight it out.
One of your critics made waves with claims of torture by the military, and that he has the scars to prove it. They had known you to be against torture, but this is happening. So when you hear that, Mr. President, how do you respond to that?
Well, it's true that some of the people were tortured. I have got some, I've not confirmed about that one, but I have confirmed some other cases. And I took it up with the, because you see, the part of the problem of Africa is capacity building. We are building armies and security forces. These come with, sometimes they come with traditional ideas from the village, or they get imported ideas from the former colonialists, like for instance the police force, which was here during the colonial times. They were using those methods. The answer for those is, apart from the documents are there, the laws are there, but the sensitization, to tell them that first of all, torture is not necessary.
Your opponents say Mr. President has been in power since 1986. What at all does he want to achieve that he hasn't achieved? What does he want to do? Children born since 1986 have known only one leader, and one leader only, President Yoweri Museveni. They said it is about time Mr. President goes to his farm, takes care of his grandchildren, and then leave it to the young generation to continue what he has built. How do you respond to them, Mr. President?
I thought those people were Democrats. I thought they were Democrats because that's a decision that is taken by the electorate. The electorate, first of all, the problem we have is that all those actors have no mission. They just want power. For us, It is not the question of who or who is to be in power. Our understanding is the what. What is to be done? If we have done something on the patriotism, good. That's why we have got some good results. That's why Uganda is not a failed state. That's why we don't have the UN here to guard us, to defend us, or France to bring troops here to defend us as if there are no people here.
That was VOA's Peter Clotty speaking to Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni at State House Entebbe. Still to come, Botswana joins a very positive and important HIV list. We'll be right back.
What does it take to run for political office in your country? So join me, Heidi Adams, on the next Straight Talk Africa. We'll discuss what it takes to run for political office. Africa has the youngest population on Earth, but some of the world's oldest leaders. Does a political candidate's age really matter? What helps and hurts younger candidates who contest in elections across the continent? Not Too Young to Run is the focus of our discussion on the next Straight Talk Africa.
Season 2 of the Basketball Africa League is here. After a historic inaugural season, 12 national champions from across the continent are ready to compete for the 2022 BAL Championship. From March 5th to March 28th, tune in and follow the BAL on Voice of America. 54 countries, 12 teams, 1 continent, but only 1 champion. Game on!
Now to a positive story from Southern Africa. Botswana is the first high-burden country to be certified by the World Health Organization on the path of eliminating mother-to-child HIV transmission. High-burden HIV countries are defined as those with more than 2% of pregnant women living with the virus. Botswana has achieved the silver tier status, a certification awarded by the WHO to countries that have reduced the mother-to-child HIV transmission rate to under 5%. For more insight, Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu spoke with John Damonti, president of the Bristol Myers Squibb Foundation, about the organization's work to help lower the rates of HIV infections between mothers and babies in Botswana.
I remember so well back in 2001 when we sat down with the government of Botswana. At the time, the infection rate in Botswana was the highest in the world, 39%, in the adult population, 15 to 49. Treatment was not available. With resources being so short, we have to prioritize. We focused on children. And the interesting thing was, back in 2001 and 2002, we didn't need to just demonstrate that we could effectively treat a child with HIV. It was happening all over the developed world. We had to demonstrate in Botswana that we could effectively treat children in very, very large numbers. In partnership with the government, in partnership with many organizations, community-based organizations, faith-based organizations, academic institutions, to really show that we need to use the Botswana healthcare system. And only then could it be sustainable in terms of growing a major program that we could also use as a blueprint for other countries.
One of the things that we hear about this milestone that has been achieved in Botswana is public-private partnership. What does an effective one look like?
One that is built on trust. And the only way to create trust is to be open, to be transparent, and you have to have those difficult discussions upfront and early. Once you build that trust, the partnerships are much more operational.
Talk to us about the work that has been done through the foundation. What has been implemented on the ground?
We were doing a lot of operational research in the treatment of pediatric HIV. We were doing work that showed nutritional supplementation and the extension of children's lives in the absence of drug and early diagnosis with the blood smear. We came up with the first studies with our partners to show you could break mother-to-child transmission after the birth of the child. But interestingly enough, at the end of the day, the children were not dying from a lack of operational research. They were dying from a lack of access to care. So we had to put together an interesting partnership to really look at how you treat children in very large numbers. We learned early in sub-Saharan Africa that you could have the optimal medical intervention, but if you don't train the communities to actually educate on what that medical intervention is and how it works, that medical intervention is not going to be successful. We've had many interventions that really did not translate well until we brought in the traditional healers and the tribal chiefs, and still we brought in the HIV positive individuals, the community-based organizations, the churches and faith-based organizations that were really able to move us along the path to optimal treatment and care.
What other lessons have you learned in this journey?
You have to have everybody's voice at the table. It just cannot be the funder and the implementer and the government. You really don't understand what the challenges and the barriers are unless you hear from the patients about what those barriers are. One of the important issues we always had was loss to follow-up. They would go for screening, they would be referred for treatment and care, they would get medication, they would go back to their villages and communities. Many would not return. So you had to have in these communities networks of partners who could actually reinforce the importance of coming back for treatment and care and follow-up. And the use of technology, whether it's low-tech or high-tech, cell phones became an incredibly important way that the children's centers could actually reach out to the mothers who hadn't shown up for an appointment. Our loss to follow-up in our children's center programs were in the low single digits. We really have to have good measurement so that we know it's actually working. And that data has to be in a feedback loop. So the government is knowing what the data is, the academic, the healthcare, it has to all be shared openly. And if they're not working, if you're going to fail early and start to rethink the way forward.
BMSF has the Secure Future Initiative. Can you explain this initiative and how such initiative can help foster greater health equity amid the pandemic and beyond?
One of the opportunities we went for right away was to look at the parallel between pediatric HIV and the success that many partners have had in that space, and think about pediatric cancer and blood disorders. We don't have enough pediatric oncologists who are trained. We don't have the nursing. We don't have the drug access. We know it's much more complicated than HIV. We've treated 10,000 children now in the 3 target countries that we launched in. Prior to Global Hope, there were 0 trained pediatric oncologists in those 3 countries. Now we have 25, and we have 10 more being trained for other countries.
What do you see as the main takeaway, whether it's from the experience with Botswana and perhaps the impact of COVID?
I think the reason we were able to jumpstart in Botswana was due to the commitment of President Festus Mogae at the time, who addressed the UN General Assembly and said, "My country is on the brink of extinction." And he immediately mobilized that allowed partnerships to exist, that put government resources in place. Political leadership and leadership of the voices that people listen to is ultimately what's going to make things move forward.
Mr. John Damonte, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the time.
That was Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu speaking with John Damonte, president of the Bristol Myers Squibb Foundation. 15 countries worldwide have been certified for eliminating mother-to-child HIV transmission, according to UNAIDS. All things basketball now. The Dakar Basketball Club is finalizing its preparation for the Basketball African League. The team has big ambitions for the second season of competition. The games are going to be played at Dakar Arena from March 5th to the 15th. Africa 54 managing editor Vincent McCory narrates this report, produced in Dakar by Wahani Johnson Sambu and Bachir Bodian.
It's a team of legendary prestige, but for the Dakar University Club, the BL remains one of the most exciting challenges, a historic moment that the champions of Senegal do not intend to miss. For their first participation, they are aiming very high.
Puisque le Duc aussi représente Since the DUC represents Senegalese basketball, we want to do more than the Douane team which stopped. I believe in the quarterfinals. Since the first phase will be played in Senegal, we'll do everything to qualify for the second round and go to the final 8 in Rwanda.
But more than the final 8, it is continental glory that shapes the dream of the college players. Players set themselves no limits and work hard to be ready before the tournament. Intense work, mentally, in top form, they rely on team solidarity to meet the challenge.
It's our first time, and we can't go there with a mindset that isn't positive, first of all. So you have to use our team spirit a lot to stay positive, because we have seen that there are a lot of teams that are more experienced than us. So it's thanks to our teamwork that we can achieve our goal in this bowl.
A mission that promises to be complicated given the caliber of the other clubs involved in this BAL. This does not diminish the enthusiasm of the coach, and he does not underestimate his opponents either.
We know some teams that played last year like Monastir, Saleh and Fab, but there are also other teams which are the Guinean team and the Rwandan team. They are certainly novices, but they made a very good recruitment. We know there are teams which are very good, but we play at home. So you have to go there with a lot of enthusiasm.
But the technical staff knows that enthusiasm alone will not be enough, let alone the group crowned champion of Senegal a few months ago. To survive in this tournament, you absolutely need reinforcements.
The base we have is certainly good, but we need to strengthen it to make a good participation in the bowl tournament. If the base is not reinforced, it alone is not enough. We need to strengthen ourselves, and knowing the level of the bowl, we need experienced players to come and support us so that we can perform.
Pending further arrivals, the team has already registered the signing of Ivorian international Abraham Sie. Without the Senegalese internationals, they will be the guides of our DUC in search of stars in the illuminated galaxy of African champions.
That was Africa 54 Managing Editor Vincent Makori narrating that report for Wahani Johnson Sambu and Bachir Bodian. And that's our show for today. From all of us here in Washington, we thank you for joining us.